Hey, everybody, peeping the GenWall Project. Happy Thursday. Another great day here in this beautiful world. Lots of challenges going on, but great conversations to be had that will help all of us make our way through the great world that we're in right now and all the things that are affecting us. Today, we have an amazing conversation with Karen Hood-Caddy, personal coach and author. But before we get into that conversation, I just want to introduce you to the GenWall Project, the human connection movement that's been around since 2016 in an effort to remind people about the importance of face-to-face social connection and, more importantly, inspire us to take action. Our goal with the GenWall Project was to get people to build the healthy relationships and supportive networks that will get them through the crisis. And here we are. Now we're in the middle of a crisis and we need these relationships more than ever. And it's our hope that we can continue to build on the relationships and the message of human connection as we come out the other side of COVID-19. Connected Conversation is a series of conversations that we launched at the start of COVID-19 to keep people connected to each other, to ideas, to organizations, to tips, to tools that will help us all manage through these challenging times in the best way possible. A huge shout out to JP Weiser for their sponsorship of the GenWall Project and helping us spread the message of human connection, and to all the volunteers and supporters out there who help us spread this message each and every day, from the medical community to organizations, businesses, to community leaders. Every one of us has an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others right now. And the GenWall Project just wants to help be the facilitator and the catalyst that makes it happen. Today, we're so fortunate to have Karen Hood-Caddy join us. You know, Karen is somebody I've known for a long time. She's a personal coach and an avid nature lover, and the author of 7 novels and 2 nonfiction novels. Her first novel, Wild Place Adventure series, Howl, was nominated for the Canadian Library Association Book of the Year for Children Award. She lives on Georgian Bay in Ontario, and she's also a thought leader for the GenWall Project. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Karen Hood-Caddy. Karen, how are you today?
Hello, Pete. I'm wonderful. Wonderful to be here and see your face and be chatting with you.
Yeah, great to have you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think there is so much of what you do, what you write about, and what you do that is so critical to people right now. I think just that raised consciousness of, you know, what's important in the world can make a huge difference. What's your perspective on that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're in such a time of transition, and people need so much help during times like this. A lot of people just don't know what to do. A lot of people are saying, you know, they just want it to be over. They want the whole COVID thing to be over. And I don't think times are ever going to go back to where they were before. But, you know, frankly, my perspective on COVID is that this has been coming for a long time. I'm an avid nature lover and environmentalist, yes. And, you know, even though I'm very sad that COVID, so many people have died and suffered, my goodness, the species that have suffered, the lakes, the forests in the last decades has been egregious. So I think that this is an important time to rebalance. And the planet is so intelligent. You know, if it has to offload a couple of 100,000 million people or whatever, it may just well do that because it knows how to rebalance more than people do, even though we like to think we're in control and we know more than nature. I really trust that nature itself and evolution is working on our behalf. So a lot of people are frightened. They think that the virus is an enemy, but I'm saying no. It's a gift for us to rebalance and realign. It's a wonderful opportunity.
You and I have known each other a long time, and this isn't probably a question that you were expecting. But when you talk about the rebalance, I know that you have a personal story about the rebalancing that your health gave to you when you were younger, in which it set you straight, I guess is, you know, for a lack of a better way, which was, it was your wake up call. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Like most people, we have to have something kind of jostle us often to wake up. And I was a social worker after university and working, you know, these long days trying to make a difference in the world. And I got sick. I got pneumonia, and I was in the hospital. And for some reason, the only bed they had was in the cancer ward. So everyone around me was dying. All these women around me were dying. And so it was a wonderful, even though at the time I wouldn't have said this, but now I can look back and say what a wonderful opportunity it was for me to re-examine what I was doing. I was smoking, I was eating terribly, I was on the run, just on the run, like so many people are these days. And so I got a chance to, once I got out of the hospital and got better, I changed everything. I mean, I started to do yoga and I meditated and became a personal development coach and worked on my own inner traumas and stuff. And I'm so grateful because I could still be that crazy smoking, social worker, and I'm not because of that situation. That was an interjection in a way by nature itself, and we're all getting that right now. We're all really getting shaken. We're getting shaken, and that's not a bad thing if we can go with it.
It's actually, that wasn't part of the plan to ask you that question,
No.
because it was only when you talked about how it's this shift that's going to awaken us. And I certainly feel like there's been, challenges in my life where you kind of stop for a second and go, hey, that doesn't feel like that's going to work for me in the long run. And I almost feel like this is the pause that will force people to ask themselves some of those challenging questions.
Yes, and why the work that you do is so important because people need leadership right now, and they're searching for answers. They're searching of ways through this situation, and a lot, as I said earlier, a lot of them just want it to end. Well, it's not going to end. We're going to be different now, from I would imagine anyway from here on in, and so people with an alternative view of a healthy way forward are going to be even more important. And I think that's what you're
Wow.
doing. And that's certainly what I'm trying to do is to create ways forward that are more balanced and healthier for us all.
Yeah, healthy for us, healthy for the environment, healthy for
Yeah.
nature, the
Yes.
animals, and everything around us. Again, I think we've heard the word sustainability, and I think that is becoming more. People are becoming more conscious that we can't just take and
No.
not give, and there needs to be that balance.
Well, the
So,
planet won't let us. I mean, we have to.
yeah.
It's like I feel like one of the things we're reconciling here is there is a force that's much bigger than us. I mean, we talk about making changes, and but really, we are going to be forced to make changes. That's what's happened now. We're being forced. And what else but COVID was big enough to stop what we were doing? I mean, it was big enough to change the way we drove to work or didn't, or how we consumed. And we become such grabbers. We've really become so greedy over the last few decades. And what else but COVID could have made us knocked us out of that pattern? So in many ways, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Lots of silver linings. And as we've asked many people, and this is the first question that I want to get in, which is really, the caregivers are oftentimes the ones that people lean on. And as a coach, I'm sure you have been dealing with a lot of people. But before we talk about your clients and the people that you serve, the first thing we like to do is check in with the caregiver and say,
Oh,
Karen, how are you?
great,
How are you
great.
holding up during COVID-19?
Yeah.
Because we got to put the oxygen mask on ourselves, because we
Mhm.
can't help other
Absolutely.
people if we're not healthy. So
Yeah.
8 months
Yeah.
in, how are you doing?
Well, I've been in a kind of unique situation in that I work at home, my children are grown. I'm not forced to, figure out how I'm going to do things in the world. Not much has been taken away from me. In fact, I love the quietness. I'm an introvert and I love the opportunity that I've had to be still and to be, to kind of tune into myself and listen in new ways and to explore some new things. I've been wanting to explore breath work for a long time now. And so I've had the opportunity, the time to do that. So even though I'm busy with my clientele, the people I work with, I would say the numbers of people I work with are a little down because people are, they're worried about money. So it's been a little bit different in that way, but the advantages for me personally have been wonderful with what I've been able to do at this time.
Isn't that interesting that I think for all of us, there are many silver linings. When I do my corporate speaking right now, I highlight, hey, here are some of the challenges that we're facing, but there's just as many silver linings. It's just where you align and what you're finding time to do in your day. And for those
Oh,
that are
yeah.
struggling with food, water, shelter, those basic fundamentals, if you've got those covered off, then really everything else should be a bonus.
Yeah, and even if money is less, what I'm finding really interesting is we're going, oh, it's amazing I can live on less. And some people have said to me, in fact, I don't have much less because I'm not going to restaurants anymore. I'm not
Yeah.
spending money on my car. I haven't bought anything at in a shopping mall in, all 8 months or whatever. So it's not as people are recognizing that the material world can be manipulated and worked with to our advantage in many ways. So what I find really interesting is that who gets victimized by this and who goes with it. And the people who are doing best,
Mm.
I think, in the with the virus, is that, or the pandemic, shall I say, are the people who are accepting it and going, okay, how can I make this work for me? This is an amazing opportunity. What can I do? In other words, they're refusing to play victim. There's a lot of people out there playing victim. Why me? When will it be over? I can't stand this anymore. So my job as a personal development coach is to help people to empower themselves in tough times and to be able to be really creative and resourceful so that they can, even in tough times, they can do well. And there's no reason to not do well in this time. There's no reason at all. We can imagine that there is. Yes, it's difficult, but there's always difficulties, right? So it's how we manage them. And in my book, if I could do a little, thing
Yeah,
on my book,
sure.
Your Inner Gold, here it is. I think there's
Find your inner
21
goal.
powerful tools to bring back your shine. Right.
Well, I love
I
that.
talk about, go ahead.
I love that, and so I think that's really powerful. I think and we'll talk about this at the end, but maybe there's an opportunity right now to kind of say, okay, so for those that aren't finding the positive out of the pandemic, who aren't seeing, the opportunity for growth in this, what are your tips to those? I think you have a few tips that you like to encourage people to do.
Well, I have some tips to help people tune into themselves and connect with themselves. But in terms of not people for help for people who are not feeling this is a good thing, is I would ask them to scan for small ways that it is working, that it is positive. So instead of orienting themselves towards what's wrong, which will bring up more of what's wrong and more difficult feelings, I would encourage people to say, okay, what could be good about this, or what is kind of working for me about this, and to kind of lean towards that bit of sunny window, and start looking for things. And once you do, I remember a client once a few years ago I worked with who hated her boss. And I gave her some homework so that every day she'd write down one thing she liked about her boss. And at first she could hardly think about anything. Well, about 2 weeks later, she called me. We had a session. She called back and she said, it's funny, I'm getting along so much better with my boss. Now, had the boss changed? No, but she had oriented herself to start seeing what was good about this man and not being so focused on what didn't work. So I think that what we pay attention to grows, right? And I can help people to look at that, to help them to focus a little bit more on some of the advantages. This is life changing. And so I would ask people to do that and to move out of resistance, because it's that resistance to things that really pushes us into the corner. It really means we can't change. We're stuck when we're in resistance. But if we can open up and that question, how is this working, or how could this work for me, will break through that resistance. Can be very powerful.
I think the interesting thing, and certainly I've called you many times over the last decade or longer, is conversation. And, again, this is the
Yeah.
GenWall Project is about creating dialogue between people. And Harvard 6 weeks ago out of Massachusetts General Hospital came out with a new piece of research that shows that the single greatest action that any of us can take in order to prevent depression. And in depression, I'll say is stress, I'll say anxiety, although I know the definitions are slightly different on those. But the reality is when you talk to other people, when you have a dialogue to work your way through some of the walls that are there, emotional, physical walls, that you can actually overcome them because that conversation allows you to vet, hey, maybe this approach or that approach. And whether it's a coach, a friend, a neighbor, a family member, just getting those conversations in can be the game changer that helps you find the path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Pete, I can't support that enough. And your work really helps that to happen, for people to recognize that and to kind of make it easier for people to do that because it's more socially acceptable, especially for men, because men often have a hard time. Women will call up, a girlfriend and offload sometimes more easily, I think, than men will. And the fact that you're a man talking about this, I think, is absolutely wonderful because it really helps with that we can help make that change. But I think that the reason I'm really fascinated with our combination of interests is that you work with connecting between people in the world, and I
Mm,
work more with connecting with people inside, helping people connect
mm.
inside. Because otherwise, if those connections aren't don't exist in an authentic, real way inside yourself, then when you connect with someone else, it doesn't really have much value, right? It's kind of like some of the worst part of the superficial Facebook stuff. This is what I'm doing, or this is
Yeah.
what you're doing, and people feeling worse and competing and doing all those sorts of things. So a lot of my work is helping people to really tune into, well, how do you really feel about this? What's going on with you? And then the connections with someone else become really valuable because it's authentic and it's based on real things.
So I think that's a really great point, and that's a good jump off spot for us to say, okay, Karen, so you say connect with oneself. What the
Yeah.
heck do you mean by connect with oneself? Because I'm here, my head's connected to my shoulders and my body's connected to my legs, and but what are you talking about when you talk about connecting with oneself?
Well, remember, we're also trained to be a certain way, right? And it's different. It's hard for us sometimes to acknowledge what we feel. We're not exactly a feeling-based culture. For example, a friend of mine, I'll say to this friend, "Do you want to have something to eat?" And he'll say, "Oh, what time is it?" Doesn't check in with himself or whether he's hungry. He wants to know what time it is to know whether he should be hungry, right? And that's an example of how most of us are trained to be like that. So there are things that you can do to help yourself tune in, and one of them is to slow down, because when you're going really fast, you leave the ground. Most vehicles that go really, really fast, like airplanes, leave the ground, and you want to be in the ground of yourself. So you want to slow down, and you want to I recommend people do what I call awareness breaks. So a couple of times in the day, you can close your eyes or just be still for a moment and say, how am I doing? Like, am I getting really stressed? Am I getting cranked out of shape here? Or am I 3 out of 10 stressed, or a 9 out of 10 stressed? Because again, being proactive and knowing where you're at you have a way better chance of making change. If you're 9 out of 10 with stress, your ability to make an intervention with yourself is much worse than if you're 3 out of 10, right? So those are two things you can do right away. And practicing listening to yourself. It's like, don't be too quick to take advice from someone else. Say, well, how do I feel about this? What's going on for me around it? And there's some wonderful tools in my book that I talk about, and I'm going to write up some of this that you can send to anyone who wants them. But the sway tests and things that help people to connect with what I call inner knowing. Because if you're working your life in your head, which is a lot of people, that's what they do, you don't know what your truth is inside. And you need tools to help yourself figure that out.
And so you're working with clients. You mentioned that things have changed in the client world, whether it's financial, but the need is greater than ever before. What are you hearing from
Greater than
those
ever.
that you talk, that you're getting the opportunity to work with, or frankly, even just in your own relations? What are you hearing out there, and what do you think people are struggling with? What are the thoughts that people are going through in the midst of COVID? Because we could start listing off. I can think of financial, job security, but then there's got to be another 50 different topics that people could be thinking about. So what are you finding?
Yeah, well, I would say because of my work, I'm looking for the underlying kind of themes in the person. So whether it's financial or relationships or the job or the kids or whatever, the themes are the same. Is someone in charge of themselves, or are they feeling victimized by what's going on? And I feel like in what I'm seeing is that there's two camps. And I think it's kind of an evolutionary story where people who haven't done much work on themselves just feel victimized. They don't know what to do. They just want it to be over. I think this is an anomaly and things are going to go back to normal, right? Well, I don't personally feel that's ever going to happen again. I think we're evolving into a new kind of world, and that we need to step forward into that. And so the people who don't resist that and say, "Okay, I'm in a new world now. Now I have to get new skills." Then the conversation becomes really creative and fun. Like, okay, what can we do here? And what might you do in the day that would make this really exciting? You have an opportunity to evolve here. I mean, this is what I think I really want people to know, is that um, the world is for us. It's not something to be afraid of. The world is trying to get us to evolve and grow and be the best we can be. It's not about suffering and, not having enough money and things being awful. It's about taking this as an opportunity to be better, to be a better custodian of yourself and your children and your family and the world. It's an amazing opportunity. I know I probably sound a little crazy here, but I really believe that. And the people that I
Yeah.
work with who started with me from victim, oh my God, they usually come in with a stress thing. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. I don't have enough money. And we start talking, and I get them into a more resourceful place. And watching that transformation to them being able to go, wow, I can do a lot right now. I'm really changing. Like when I had pneumonia, right? They can take this as such an opportunity to grow and evolve. And that in itself is just wonderful. So
Yeah, I
how can
think
one
it's
approach that?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Again, the GenWall Project. I just wrote an article. I know I shared it with you this morning before the chat. The reality is, my biggest fear for those that aren't embracing it, and those who think we will go back to the old way again, who are still set in, I'm going to live life the way I've always lived life, the way things have always been. I think this is where we're going to see a second phase of mental, physical health issues, and people who will struggle as they come to grips with the fact, to your point, that there will
Yeah,
be a new
yeah,
normal, that we are not
yeah.
going back. And so it's
It's
important for us to have these conversations so that bit by
yeah.
bit, it's like the drop of water that slowly gets people to go, oh, maybe it won't be the same when we go back.
Yeah, and what if it isn't? I mean, that's a great question. And Eckhart Tolle puts it this way, the spiritual teacher, who I think is, really fantastic in so many ways. He says, often we haven't suffered enough. We've really suffered. We change and we grow. And if you haven't suffered enough, you're still battling and it's painful. So, there are lots of people who are still battling this reality of COVID or in denial, as we have so well in the United States right now. So,
Do,
there's
do you
those two
know?
things. But there's a beautiful middle, which is evolving the lessons of life and realizing we are loved and the nature's trying to grow us. And it's wonderful. It's so
It's
good in so
so
many
it's
ways.
so interesting that you say that. Yesterday, I had a conversation with an old friend. He had a traumatic brain injury 16 years ago, and he's recovering.
Wow.
He's going to do a connected conversation with us in the next couple of weeks, talking about the importance that people and connection played in his
Yeah.
recovery.
Yeah.
But what he said, which I just was absolutely blown away by yesterday, he said, Pete, if I had the choice, I would go back again and have this injury,
Yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
only because of the injury that I
Mm,
actually awoke to what was really
yeah.
important, and the people in my life. And he did say, that he lost most of the people that were in his life when the injury happened, and
Yeah.
only a select few, and a whole new community and a whole new world opened up to him
Mm,
after the injury. And you kind of
yeah.
go, that's crazy. But
That's crazy. Yeah.
the reality is, and as I know, even through GenWell, is that the people who most embrace the GenWell project are people who've been through a challenge, who recognized at some
Yeah.
point in their life
Yeah.
how much they needed other people. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that we have to go through that crisis. But is there anything we can do to prevent that?
Yeah, I don't know if there is. I mean, I think that we can work on ourselves to be more open and trusting, and meditation helps with that. And any practices that still you, like doing, even exercise itself helps to calm us down. But doing yoga or meditation or whatever, all those practices can help us kind of accept what is more, and then be more resilient in those situations. And therefore, people who do those practices work through things more quickly. And in that way, that can be a real advantage. But often we are kicking and screaming as we go through these things. I mean, you think of the process of birth itself. It's painful. There's labor pains. We feel that contraction. We feel we're being pushed in places that we don't know. And what was that old cartoon a few years ago? What the butterfly thinks is what the caterpillar thinks is the end of the world is for the butterfly the new world. And
Uh,
so, absolutely, we don't like it when we're in it. Who does? When I was in the hospital with pneumonia, I was thinking, my God, I'm going to die. This is horrible. Let me out of here. And that's where a mentor is so crucial, because a mentor can hold your hand in the darkness and say, oh, there's a light over here. Let's explore that a little bit. Or, I'm here with you. Let's go through this together. We'll figure it out. And I know you've done a ton of that in your work. I mean, you've been at the forefront of a movement, which is brutally difficult to get something started, and all the insecurities that come with that. You had to face a lot, and I have a great deal of admiration for you for the way you've done that. But that's the name of it, isn't it? Growth involves some struggle and pain. And the only way through, if you can get help, and that's where the conversations outside can really, really help. And people are saying that to me a lot in right now, which is, how great it is that they are doing coaching or whatever, because it's helping them get through this very stressful time, and it's giving them resources to get through it, which is what we need. We're new
Yeah, I think,
territory, right? New
and I
territory.
and I do believe, and you mentioned it earlier, and I am a big proponent of coaching. Of course, I do believe that mentoring, to your point, is hugely valid. And I think we just got so busy in our lives that oftentimes people weren't making time to mentor other people because they couldn't find time to to chase the golden ring or whatever their aspiration was, which in some cases was misguided. But when people
Yeah.
normally come for coaching or normally reach out to other people, unfortunately, they're in the crisis already, right?
Yeah, often that's true. But even so, even if they are in a crisis, that's a great chance to start things new. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think coaching can be very, very, and movements like yours, all of it are prompts for people to grow, right? To take their lives on and become more of all their beautiful attributes.
Yeah, I think the key for certainly for the GenWell and for the best situation, and I think you might even have said this to me long ago, is that when you get to the big leagues in a sporting, whatever sport, hockey, baseball, whatever, do you get more coaches or less coaches?
Yeah,
And the
absolutely. I
reality
did say
is,
that.
as
Yeah,
you start to perform at a higher level, it actually makes sense that you need more
yeah,
coaching versus less. Where I think the natural inclination of the human species is when I feel like things are going in the right direction, I kind of throw off the coaches, I throw off all the gear, the protective gear, and I go, okay,
yeah.
I got
I'm
this.
fine.
I'm on my way.
I
And
don't need
then
anyone.
all of a sudden something happens and you're back in square one, and it's like, hey, Karen, can I get some time with you? And so yeah, I think sharing these messages and creating the awareness around the importance of communication, the importance of staying connected, of having a support network around you is so critical, especially. And I think, Karen, I'd love your perspective on this. We don't know when this is going to end. We don't know where the
Absolutely not.
start, the
If it
finish,
if it ends, if it
if it
ends,
ends,
Pete.
and
Yeah.
what will it look like? And how many
Yeah.
more people will lose a job? And on your street or in your family, how many people will have work and won't have work? And what will those people do? And how can they find purpose in meeting in the 8 to 10 hours that they used to spend in a workplace? I know one of the questions I had, and I think this is the stepping off point to that, is how do you think things have changed? What were people dealing with in the first month or the second month of
Yeah,
COVID?
that's so true. Yeah, it's very
And now
different now.
what are they dealing with 8, 9, 10 months in? What do you think is going through people's heads?
Yeah, and also I think what's interesting is well, that whole question of when's it going to end, and I think the
Yeah.
people are at a new stage of depression right now. They're realizing we may not even have Christmas. Like, skip Thanksgiving. I know that's off the table, American Thanksgiving anyway. And people are now saying, well, they're closing things down. England closed down is locked down now today for the first time in a while. And
Yeah.
because they're hoping then they can get things better for Christmas. But we may be just in a different world for a while. And as much as people resist hearing that, I think if we can open to that, it'll give us more freedom. Because what if we said, okay, this is going to go on for a year or 2 years? What if we say that in different levels of opening and closing, which is like an aperture? I think that's going to happen. We're going to open, we're going to close, we're going to open, we're going to close. It's probably going to be many renditions as we find our way through this. And the less resistant we can be to that, the better, because there's just going to be many I think that's what I worry about now, is the level of depression, because people are out of the idea that it's going to be over in a few months. That's off the table now. Everyone knows that it's going to be here for a while, and maybe for another year, at least till the spring. So what do I do now? Well, time to get resilient.
And I think part of that resilience is, and I almost feel silly saying it, is about continuing to maintain your connections with people, whether it's a coach, whether it's a
Yeah.
family member, whether it's, a professional. If you're in crisis, making sure you're using the resources that are available. And thank goodness they are available to us in this country. I know that
Yes.
there's a couple hotlines for older people that they're always there. There's obviously the Kids Help Phone for younger people who also have a university and younger adolescent, I think is what they refer to it as, a hotline number. There's lots of resources there, but certainly our message from the GenWall Project and as a coach is, hey, don't wait till you're in the crisis before you pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and call a friend, call a coach, call
Yeah.
somebody so that you
Yeah.
can stay there, because we are going to have to manage ourselves. To your point,
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
this never changes, and we've grown up with these expectations as what life is and what we are going to receive out of life, then we're going to need this type of moderating for years.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this pay as you can thing. I want to mention that because I'm doing a
Yeah.
new pay as you can regime on my website, Karen at personalbest.org. And so I'm doing coaching and just saying to people, okay, pay what you can. Because one of the things I'm really aware of is that there's a great opportunity here for me to serve. And I know you feel that too in your work, Pete. We get to serve. And how awesome is that, that we can be helpful to people, that we can be sort of mentoring people through very difficult times. There's something very beautiful about being able to do that. And so to me, that's been a gift of this, to seeing how the difference that I can make in people's lives. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that if someone is struggling financially and they know they need help, or they want to get help before they know they get into a deep depression. I've helped many people not go deep into depression over the last few months. They feel themselves heading there, and I'm able to help them get out, or avoid that. Let's put it that way. So please don't hesitate to call, because I'm glad to do that. It's an honor to help people.
That is truly generous, and I think it's
Mm.
amazing. And I think a lot of
Thank you.
people over the course of the last few months have fought to find their purpose and their mission. And
Yeah.
the great thing is, and no different than the catalyst of the original blackout, the 2003, which was the
Yes,
catalyst for
that.
the GenWell project, is in times of crisis we are amazing. We help other people. We understand how good it feels to be there. The problem is we're 8 months in, and now we're out of the immediate crisis, and now it's still. Don't forget, you felt good when you helped other people. You felt good picking up those groceries for the elderly person. You felt good saying hi to somebody on the street, and all those simple actions that we take every day don't just make that person better off and happier and healthier. They make us happier and healthier as
Yeah.
well.
And some new studies, Pete, just to back that up, are showing that
Yeah.
helping other people changes the chemistry of the brain. And I find that really, really interesting. The more self-serving we are, the brain then becomes even grabbier and more judgmental and more anxious. Whereas when we give, it's kind of like, I guess it drops us down into a place of trusting that, but the brain then changes and becomes more resilient and just accepting of life. So it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I did see. I was listening to Dr. Laurie Santos's Happiness Lab podcast, and I think it
Right.
was something along the lines. They gave somebody $10 and said, you can spend it on yourself or you can spend it on somebody else.
Right.
And the people who
Yes.
spent it on somebody else were happier than the people who
Oh,
spent it on themselves, because the purchase was short-lived, or the happiness with a purchase for yourself was short-lived versus knowing that you'd made a difference in somebody else's life by supporting them. So it is really powerful stuff. So
yeah.
Karen, I'd love to get as we get closer to the end of the conversation, I really would love to kind of give people that summary of what can people do if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling, and I don't even say depressed, because God forbid that people get to that stage without getting the opportunity to talk to somebody like you or hear a conversation like this one. what are the things that people can do? Give us that list again. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think it's so important that we give people the tools and we give them the ideas, because that's what Connected Conversations is all about, is let us talk to you or be a part of this conversation for 30 minutes. And hopefully by the end of it, we've given you some ideas on how you can reset and move forward from today.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the important beginning places is to be self-compassionate. I have like a lovely phrase I use with clients all the time, and it's no wonder. No wonder I feel this way. No wonder I'm pissed off right now. No wonder I'm feeling really depressed. This is a hard time, and I'm doing the best I can with it. And, that kind of really compassionate self-talk can really help. And then secondly, slowing down, and looking at small pleasures. People think it's interesting. People think it's the big pleasures that make a difference. But, studies have shown that really it's the cup of tea in the afternoon, or talking to a friend, as you say, or writing a letter to someone, or, those small things of self-care, reading a good book in the afternoon, or whatever it is for you, going for a run, they can make a huge difference. And then asking yourself, catching things early. I really, really support that. And I do that work intensively with clients, because often they don't know that things are bad until they're like 8 or 9 out of, depression, or eight or 9 out of 10 of feeling really down. If they can catch it at 5 or 6, and I teach them how to do that. So then you've got some interventions you can do at 5 or 6 out of 10. Then you have, if you're 9 out of 10, you probably might just be able to talk meds. I mean, that may be the only options at that. But sometimes that works too for a short period of time. And then, I can help people to wend their way off of them if they want. So those are some things that they can do. And checking in with themselves regularly, doing small things. Taking charge. I think taking charge is really important. What can I do today that puts me back in charge of my life? I'm not a victim. There are things I can do here today. There's opportunities that COVID gives me that not having COVID wouldn't. And I'm hearing that over and over again. My God, I could read in the middle of the afternoon. Oh my God, I don't have to sit in traffic. I can cook, and I can take a cooking class online. I can play the piano over lunch. I don't have to buy clothes. There's all kinds, so you can scan for the things that are good. And I think that can work too. And I think the other thing is I would recommend is meditation. Just opening up to the fact that we are loved and things will work out. They always do work out in some way. And to kind of, if we can just go with that life is for us, not against us, and to open to that more, that this is about evolution pushing us to be big, to be beautiful, to be the best we can be. And if we can start to trust that, then you go in the flow of this, and you won't feel so upset and so hurt. You won't be battling it tooth and nail.
I love all of that. And I remember seeing a quote on a post on Facebook that said, so far we're 100% for getting through the things in life that we thought were going to kill us. To your point, we are going to get through this, and we are going to
evolve
get through
or die.
it.
That's the one published. Remember, evolve or die. And it's true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. And I think the powerful thing is knowing that when you have people around you, people who care, people who can support you with, hey, is it going for a walk with a neighbor? You mentioned run. Is it connecting with somebody? Is it making a choice to eat better because you have a conversation with somebody who says, food can actually really change your mindset and shift your, is it drinking water? Is it, we know that the research on sleep now is more important than ever before. Maybe so it's true. And obviously we had that big election south of the border a couple of days ago. One thing, I was talking to somebody on a different show that I was on who mentioned that they were struggling with depression, and at the same time mentioned that they were watching the news pretty much 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I think there's another one, getting away from the news, getting away from the average person was spending 12 hours a day tied to technology. Well, I think Harvard research shows they're now 40% longer. So we're 16 hours a day on technology right now. Well, I can tell you the first thing we should all do is put down the phone, put down the computer, step away from the TV and find some time. And I know you're big on nature. Get outside, even if it's just to stand and smell the fresh air and do some breathing exercises. So many little things that oftentimes I do think we forget because we're caught up, and that's okay. But as you mentioned right off the top, or maybe it was even in our conversation earlier this morning, it's about resetting. Wherever you are, you're there. you can't change where you are.
Yeah,
But with
yeah,
a little bit of a reset, with a few tips like you just gave us, the opportunity is reset right now and
yeah.
say, from
Right
this
now,
point
so yeah,
forward,
yeah.
I'm going to actually, here's how I'm going to approach it a little bit differently.
Wonderful, Pete. All great. All really
Hey,
great.
so Karen, we always ask a
Yes.
couple last questions before we end off. And so
Okay.
the time is going to come where, we've both agreed that there's probably a new normal to come. What are you going to do when there is a vaccine, when there are treatments and we can get back to the new normal and we can do what we want to do? How do you think you're going to celebrate the end of this, I'll call it craziness, this insanity, this pandemic, even though we may not be exactly the same? How do you think you're going to celebrate it?
Well, I hope that I keep some of the quietness that I've been able to relish in the
Uh,
last while. So I don't want to give it all. I don't want to go back. I personally, I do not want to go back. So I feel like I've had some wonderful awarenesses through this journey, and I want to keep those. But in terms of how I might change socially, I love having dinner parties, and I haven't had one in forever. And there's something about having your besties, all the people you love in your life over for dinner. You cook for them, and you open the wine or beer or whatever, and you just hang out together for a while over good food in your backyard or whatever, which I know is also part of what your movement really encourages to do. And people get real, they talk, and sometimes there's a few tears and lots of laughter usually, and it's wonderful. So that's certainly going to be one of the things that, because I've really missed that. I really missed having people in my home at my dining room table.
I
But
do
my
want to
barbecue for
pause.
sure, right? A
Yeah,
backyard or whatever.
I do want to pause on that and say, oh, yes, I get the connection. Thank you. That's awesome. We want that. But, certainly one of the messages of the GenWall Project is about finding the balance. And I think the
Yeah.
first part of your celebration is really important for us to hear, which is, we've had an opportunity to see what a slower, and not everybody's had the opportunity. Let's be fair that,
Yes,
for
yes.
some
You've got
people, this
3 kids at
hasn't been
home, and
easy.
yep, yep, yep. I get it.
But I think there's something special in that opportunity that, no commutes, no, running to the office, no running downstairs for lunch, no running down and running and literally running,
Yeah,
24 hours a
yeah,
day.
yeah,
And that maybe that capturing some of that peace that
yeah, and
we've
keeping
had
it.
and keeping it,
Yeah,
I think
and
would be
keeping
really
it.
powerful.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of people are aware of that, that is one of the gifts, and they want to keep that. So hopefully we will.
So as we wrap up, Karen, where can people find out more about Karen Hood-Caddy, and how can they, if they want to know more, get in touch with you?
Well, please email me, Karen, Karen, personalbest.org is my email, or they can go on my website, personalbest.org. That's the best way. And I'm very open to just chatting with people about whether we could be talking more, or what I might be able to do and what I can't do. The coaching relationship, as you know, it's a fit. You go have to have a good fit. And that's important to me. And I think it's more effective when we are a good fit. So people are welcome to call me, and we can talk about whether I could be helpful to them or whatever. I have a newsletter, a blog that I send out every week, which lots of these ideas and resources. I'm really big on sending my list resources right now, as many as lots of people are sending out resources. But I think it's really a good thing for people to feel resources. So that's the main way. I'm not a
That's
huge
awesome.
social media person, but that's the best way to get to me.
Well, and I think the important thing is the accessibility. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. But I agree with you. Right now, we need to put helping others at the forefront. And I think your tools and resources and your newsletter are great ways for people to, maybe they're not at the point where they need to reach out just yet. Maybe they can do it
Yeah.
themselves.
Mhm.
Maybe they can hear some of the tips that we've talked about in the conversation today, and they can make some choices to make changes and reset now, but always knowing that, if the need is there, if you get to, I think you said, don't wait till you're a 9 out of 10. If you're a 3 out of 10, maybe you can use some of the tools that you've shared and what you share in your
Absolutely. Yeah.
newsletter.
Yeah.
At a
Yeah.
5, you might want to send me a note and pick up the phone. And at a 9, hey, I'm not sure what the answer is at 9, but I think for all of us, the goal with these
The sooner the
conversations
better. Yeah.
is to get people to take action sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So
Right,
Karen,
Pete.
thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your
Oh,
passion and your work, and all the great tips that you've shared so that we can keep people happy and healthy as we go through this crazy pandemic that is changing the way that we all look at the world.
Thank you so much, Pete. I really enjoyed every minute of this. It's been great connecting with you.
Yeah,
It's an
and I'm sure
example.
you and I will be connecting again soon, I'm sure.
Yes. Okay, Pete.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you,
Same
Karen.
to you, Pete. Okay.
Ciao for now.
Bye-bye. Yeah,
Bye.
bye.